This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and today we're going to do some smoked teriyaki beef jerky in the Masterbuilt 140B digital electric smoker. So I'm going to go through some things here because I didn't really want to run you in the kitchen today. I wanted to try to keep it a little bit shorter. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the marinating process, and then we'll put the recipe up here on the screen for you to check out really quick. So first thing you do is you're gonna mix the liquids. The liquids include a half a cup of soy sauce, a half a tablespoon of fish sauce, 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, and don't be scared to go over on that, and 3 tablespoons of mirin, which is it's kind of like a Japanese wine, a cooking wine. So feel free to use white wine if you don't have it, because I would hate for you to buy a whole bottle of the stuff and have it go bad. If you use regular sweet white wine and just put just a pinch of sugar in it to bring up the sweetness, it'll react almost the exact same way. So throw that in the microwave and microwave it for 1 minute, and then give it a stir, and then go ahead and add your dry ingredients. So normally brown sugar would be considered as a wet ingredient, but for this recipe I went ahead and added it post, but if you want to add it before, go ahead. So then add the 1/4 cup of light brown sugar, not dark brown sugar for this one, because dark brown has molasses and you're really trying to avoid the molasses taste. Then 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. I'm not a ginger fan, so I go a little bit less than that. 1 teaspoon of garlic granules, and 1 tablespoon of smoked salt. You can use regular salt if you'd like, and you know, the more salt you add, the more of a cure you'll get. But if you do go that route, you're probably going to want to marinate it a little bit longer to make sure that osmosis has a chance to completely work, because a marinade will, you know, get into the meat and stick to the meat, but a brine, which is what it is if it has more salt in it, it needs to work in and work out completely, otherwise you'll end up with dry meat, because it sucks moisture out, then it equalizes and sucks it back in. So you're going to mix those ingredients, and if they don't dissolve completely, throw it back in the microwave for a second and go ahead and heat it up a little bit more to make sure that you get those in. A regular whisk will work really good for helping along the process. Then after all that's dissolved, I usually set it aside for a minute and let it cool off while I drink a cup of coffee or whatever I'm doing. And then I throw in 1 cup of ice water. When I do this, I take and fill a cup full of ice and then pour water in and let it melt for a couple of seconds so all the water has a chance to get really cold, usually in the refrigerator. And then I pour out and measure 1 cup minus most of the ice cubes. So that way you get the coldest water you can without, you know, getting the ice that's going to change your measurement and dilute the measurement. But today, in today's recipe, I substituted pineapple juice in for the ice water. Now the pineapple juice was in the bottom of the fridge in the coldest spot, which is where I usually keep it if I have an open container. And I like to add the pineapple juice, especially with teriyaki. It just adds a little something, and I'm a fan of pineapple juice all the time. Now, you know, it's missing one thing that's really important, and that would be smoked paprika. So feel free to add smoked paprika if you want, at least a pinch. You won't see that on the recipe. So then you want to let that cool until it's 40 degrees or less. So put it in the very bottom of your refrigerator or stash it in your freezer for a little while. Don't let it freeze, but you know, you can put it in the freezer for 30 minutes and then pull it out and set it in the freezer. Once you're at temperature, go ahead and slice your meat. Today I used a piece of tri-tip, and I'm going to show you here that what I did was I cut off the tip and I sliced that up, and then I took the rest of the tri-tip roast and I sliced it down the middle, so that way it would create 2 1-inch thick pieces of meat, and then I sliced that up, and that's kind of how you get these nice long strips by doing that. And the bottom half was a little bit thinner. If you have a slicing guide, use that. If not, you can buy yourself 2 1-inch dowels, or you can even use 1x2s or 1x1s to kind of guide your knife a little bit. you know, like if you have cake supports or something like that, that works really well too. We have all of the meat sliced here, and I'm going to show you a picture here of what it looks like arranged out on the counter. And I took lots of pictures today because I'm also going to put this in writing for the Masterbuilt article. Now, I went ahead and I preheated this, and we'll come back to that in a second. But this soaked in the refrigerator for about 4 hours. Now, 6 hours is ideal, and 8 hours is fine. If you're brining it, so if you add more salt and you want to cure it completely, you're going to want to go more than 8 hours. Now, when I did put it in there, I did turn it over a couple of different times, and I used a glass mixing bowl, which is completely safe to brine in. You can also use a Ziploc bag or a vacuum seal bag. I find that if you use a vacuum seal bag and leave it in there the whole 8 hours, you can just kind of flex it around a little bit, and it works really good. Then, after you're done with that, you want to give it a light rinse and organize it on your tray. In today's event, when I organized it, I put the regular teriyaki with a light spice mix, the 3-2-1-1, on the top. And then on the other tray, I put a little bit of cow cover and a little bit of heavy pepper. And that's just black pepper, nothing else. I deliberately did not rinse out the bowl after I did the cow cover. That way I could get just a little cow cover on that pepper one also. The meat was completely rinsed and dry. Now, if you don't rinse it off, you're going to end up with the salt on there. And if you want your meat a little saltier, then don't rinse it off. I personally don't like to do over salty, and sometimes poultry is a real bad suspect with that if you don't rinse off the poultry, it's going to taste like a salt lick. So you got to rinse off your poultry. And I like to rinse my salmon off too. So this has been preheating, and I preheated up to 160 degrees. Feel free to go up to about 170 depending on what kind of time frame you would like, but the lower that you run it, the better the consistency of your jerky is going to be. I'm going to fire it for the first, say, almost 2 hours with smoke, probably maybe an hour and a half, pretty good. And then I'm just going to turn the temperature down just a little bit and just let it run, so that way it will just run out. Now, if you have a dehydrator, you can also run this through the dehydrator, or you can even do it in the oven if you're not looking for a smoke taste. Another tip is a little bit of liquid smoke and other ingredients that are smoked, like the smoked salt, will simulate smoker, but that's not what we're here for. I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and you can see that just like normal, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to put this in there. So I have a drying rack in there to lift it a little bit, which helped me get it in. If you don't have the drying rack in, it's going to be much more difficult, which would be the case with this one, except this one is kind of special. This one, and I'm going to go ahead and just transfer it over here. You see how easy that it moved out. This one is the Masterbuilt grill mat, and the Masterbuilt grill mat has these edges. And so this stuff reinforces the grill mat to keep it really stiff. So it's a lot easier to deal with when you're dealing inside of a cookie sheet or whatever. And so you can see that it's holding stiff, and it just goes right in there like that. Now, I want to get this closed as fast as I can, but I also want to inspect the chip tray. These are the chips from the last run. I'm going to close this really fast so that way it stays warm. And I just want to dump these out really quick and make sure the tray is clean. So I'll be right back. So I want to show you this, and this is what is left after I dumped it out. I'm going to try to do that. There you go. So you can see that. And I'm not happy with that. Will it work? Probably. Will it work the way I want it? Probably not. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe that out. Now, if you have a barbecue brush or something like that that will work, then you can do that. And an old wire barbecue brush would work just fine, because we kind of discourage people to use regular wire brushes on barbecues anymore because the bristles fall out. Now, I want to get as much flavor in there as fast as I can, and I don't want to have to babysit it, so I'm going to use a strong wood. But if you want to use something a little bit lighter, then use cherry. I really like cherry with my jerky. Apple works good too, but I prefer that with pork. So this is mesquite. I'm going to put a heaping fill in there, and then I'm just going to shake it just a little bit. So I want it in there, and I don't mind it a little over full because it'll slide right in there. I got that in there. It's all the way in and setting perfect, and then it's as close to the element as I can get it. Now I do want to make sure that that burns really good. And if you don't want to babysit this, this is a perfect time that you could use something like one of these pellet trays or a pellet tube. In the Masterbuilt, the pellet trays, I got it wet, but that's okay, it needed a little bath. In the Masterbuilt, it really works better if you use the tray because it's got the little lift on it than the tube. If you're using the pellet smokers like a Traeger, those tubes seem to work a little bit better in there, but I don't know why that is. But you do want to prop it slightly so that way the stuff doesn't fall out of the tube. As it's burning, it tends to fall out and it slows down the burn. So you can use this and walk away. But remember, you only want to put in about 2 hours worth of smoke, so don't overdo it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to run this at 2 hours at the 160 degrees or a little more, and then we're going to back it down. During that 2 hours, I'm going to babysit that smoke and make sure that it's getting plenty of smoke. So I'll see you in a second. For me, it'll be 2 hours. We are at the 2 hour mark, and this is the point where I like to check it and see how we've been doing on the smoke level. Now, if everything went good, then we should be fine. I did notice the smoke was a little low, so halfway through I went ahead and raised the temperature just a little bit. I changed the temperature from 160 to 170, which will get the wood chips to burn a little bit better. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and take a look at the wood chips. I've already looked in here. So there's a little bit of ash on the top. So I'll show you there. You can see a little bit of ash on the top and it's still smoldering lightly, but for the most part, this is pretty well burned through. So I'm going to go ahead and dump this in the fire pit. And the pan is pretty clean, so I'm going to go ahead and just put it back in there. Now while I've got it open, I'm going to take a piece out here. Let's find one of the small thin ones. I want to point out that this is beef, and I wouldn't do this with any other, but with beef I would be more than willing to do this. Oh, it tastes really good. But I can tell right now it needs just a little more smoke. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit it with one more pan and call it good. So I have the loader tube here. Set it down on a surface so it won't melt. I really should use a different table than I do for this, but here we are. But I've noticed with this tube, and it's smaller than the tube from the previous smoker that I have over there, is that if you put your hand down the middle and pour the wood chips up against your hand, that it just kind of flows right into the middle and fills up evenly. So then you go ahead and you put this in facing upright, load it in there, and then there's an arrow on the side that tells you to just turn it like that. Once you've turned it all the way, then I like to turn it back, right before, like I pull it out and then just set it in just like that. I don't know if it makes any difference whether it's up or down, but I just like it facing upward. So now comes the long wait process. I'm not gonna even look inside this thing for another 3 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it at this temperature for 1 hour, and then I'll drop it down, back down to 160 or even 150, depending on how I feel about the jerky and the temperature outside. In 3 hours, I'll look at it and then I'll make a decision how long it needs to go. Now, because this smoker just completed its seasoning, the jerky will pick up some flavor from the seasoning itself, which is a good thing, without over smoking it. Now, the last dish that I did was macaroni and cheese, and then after I turned the camera off, I turned the smoker down a little bit and let it sit in there because dinner was still an hour away. Well, the problem with that is that macaroni and cheese picks up smoke really, really well. So it got kind of smoky. It wasn't bitter, but it was definitely really strong. And honestly, my wife doesn't like strong smoke. I am fine with that, but she isn't. So we want to make sure that we get the right level of smoke in here. I'm going to go ahead and wait for 3 hours, and I will see you then. That'll be a couple seconds for you. Okay, it's been 3 hours since the last time I've seen you, and total cook is just a little over 5 hours now. It's probably been closer to about 3 hours and 15 minutes. But so we're a little over 5 hours now, and I did pop my head in here and look at it about a half an hour ago, and it is coming along really nice. So first thing I'm going to do is, I know that I should have went ahead and popped that out and taken a picture before, but let's go ahead and put this picture up there so you can get a good idea of what I'm seeing. So there's that picture. And I'm going to pull this bottom tray out here and look at it. And this is looking exactly the way it should look. You can see how the jerky is still a little flexible, but it looks like it's starting to completely dry out. And I took a couple pieces of pepper, well, because pepper's usually my favorite, and I wanted to give it a little try. This back one here is the least done, and the front one seemed to be a little more done. This smoker might be up for the biscuit test, where you just throw some biscuits on there and see where the hot spots are, because we might have a hot spot thing going on here. I set this in there for a few minutes while I went to the store. Now, let's go ahead and pull this one out. And this one is on the top here, and I want you to notice that it's not as firm as we want it. So it's starting to dry out really nice, and the taste is great. This one here is perfect right here. You can see this one. See how it's holding firm? That one's good. But right here could use more time. So I'm just going to go ahead and let it roll right along. I think we're probably looking at about 2 more hours, and the temperature is just fine. I'm still running it at 170, and it's not overcooking it or anything. But now it's not jerky consistency, but the meat is completely done. And that's really good. Could have used a little bit more time soaking in the marinade, but I kind of rushed that so I could get this video out. So I'll be back in 2 hours. For you, that'll be a couple seconds. So I went another hour and a half, and I peeked my nose in there to see what it looks like, and I think it looked really good. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop the picture that I just took up there, and that's where we're at right now. Go ahead and open this thing up, and I'll turn the power off. Jerky is really dry, so after I'm done, I don't usually keep running the smoker. With most other things, I'll keep running the smoker for a while. And so what I like about this is that with the jerky, when you're done with the grill mats, you can literally just do that and pretty much roll it all to the center, just like that. Now this is the main one up here, which is just the plain teriyaki. I'm going to try not to set it in the water from the rain. And let's grab a nice looking piece here. So it's still a little soft, but we're going to leave it out on the counter to dry for a few minutes. You can see it's flexible, it bends, and okay. Pulls right off, light and flaky. And it's dry all the way through, so it's not like wet, like a wet meat. But it needs to be dry so that way it has a jerky consistency and holding power. I'm still going to refrigerate this. I don't want to leave it out unless it's actually fully cured. To fully cure it, we would just add about 3 more tablespoons of salt and let it sit a little bit longer. And I know I mentioned that earlier in the video, but I want to make sure that you remember that. Once this is dry, so I'll let it dry for a couple of hours, then I'll just put it in a bag and toss it in the back of my fridge in the coolest spot right next to my smoked cheese. So this is going to make a great side for my smoked cheese. So I can have teriyaki jerky, and this is really mild teriyaki and not that sweet because I don't like what you buy in the store because it just tastes like sugar to me. That tastes like beef and a light teriyaki seasoning. And I'm going to set this one down. And I'm going to go back after one of these. This is a little bit more well done than that other stuff. And you can see it's still pretty flexible. And this is probably almost traditional jerky consistency. This spice is cow cover from Cosmos. This cow cover is really good. I really like it on almost all the beef products that I make. But my favorite is to use it on a grilled ribeye, not a smoked ribeye. I mean, it's great for smoking, and it was really good on brisket. But if you put it on a grilled ribeye, sous vide it for 2 hours, and then throw it on the grill for 5 minutes, oh my gosh, it's so good. And I'll tell you, it worked really good on here. Very mild, but very tasty. There's another seasoning that I have that I got from Wet n Wild Workshop that I would like to try, but you can only do so many things in one video. So, if you've seen anything you like here, there is going to be a link to an article for teriyaki jerky below for the Masterbuilt smoker, and there'll be an article, review article for that. Below that, there will be my affiliate links. If you use those, I will get compensated, so thank you, I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I don't say this enough, but if you did enjoy the video or got some value out of it, make sure you like it and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.